And then when it became the corporate ministry, it was just like, wah, 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 wah. Yeah, it sucked. It really did. I hated it. Welcome to 6 Feet Under, a WWE and Fanatics original production. Well, I'm solo today, but today we're going to change things up. We've been getting a lot of questions, so we're going to dip into the mailbag and see what you guys have to say or ask.
What is your prediction for Brock Lesnar versus Obafemi at SummerSlam?
What is my prediction for Brock and Oba? Man, that is a tough one. I think selfishly, I want to see Oba take Brock out in Hell in a Cell. Me personally, I didn't have that great a record against Brock in Hell in a Cell, but man, that's one of those super fight things, man. That's one of those fights like, man, I want to see what's going to happen here. Oba has, this incredible aura right now and all this momentum. He's new to the scene and he has all that energy behind him from the fans. I just hope that he doesn't get too distracted by the entrance and the walk and all that. All that's great, and he gets an incredible reaction. But again, to have long-term success, you've got to be able to deliver night in and night out in the ring. I think the table is set for him to be a huge superstar. It's just going to be a matter of channeling his and keeping his focus on the big prize. And again, if he gets through Brock, and then the next thing is a shot at a world title. But I think I think he's one of those guys that the sky's the limit, and I'm anxious to see how far he takes this. But I hope that doesn't distract him from what'll be standing across the ring from him. Even in the later part now of Brock's career, he's still obviously one of the most dangerous guys to be in the ring with. And not only that, he's going to be in his hometown, which I think is going to give him a little extra pep in his step. Oh man, I tell you what, that's a coin toss. Oba at Mania manhandles Brock. Brock comes back. I think maybe if Brock, got to go back and forth on that. I think Oba will do better the shorter the match goes. I think if it gets into the later 15, 20, 25-minute mark, Brock's experience, I think Brock's experience probably will serve him well here. Flip of the coin, I'm going to go with the momentum. I say Oba wins in a Hell in a Cell classic.
Do you have a favorite moment with Brock Lesnar?
A favorite moment with Brock, Brock is one of those guys that I didn't have a great deal of success with. Well, I think two very iconic moments that's happened with Brock and I. One was we had a backstage fight that it took its toll not only on each of us, but all of the people that were trying to break it up. Yeah, it was a pretty good piece of business where we were knocking the crap out of each other. And, that was one thing that I always felt Brock brought out of me was that little extra bit of aggression, because you have to have that against Brock. You have to go into a match with Brock knowing that it's going to be twice as physical, and he's going to test you and your physical limits. And that backstage brawl that we had did that. And the other one, which is completely out of my character, but the setup into the double laugh, it was just one of those things that happened. Normally when I would set up, there would not be someone there with a grin on their face. So, I think he was, I think he was trying to get in my head. And then, when I laughed back at him, it was kind of a sarcastic, "That ain't gonna work with me, kid." And I think it was so out of character for not only Brock, but it was definitely out of my character. And Undertaker can't laugh in a joyous or funny way. That doesn't work. But I think the sarcastic laugh, it really was like, took the character to even a different place that no one had ever seen. And, as strange as it was and out of nowhere it came, I think it was, again, it's one of those iconic moments that people talk about still today. After all the wars and all the fights and all the matches that we had, I think that's one of the things that, obviously him beating the streak was probably the first thing, but that return match and the double setup and laughing has got to be, I think, one of the second things that people think of most when they think of Brock and Undertaker.
What's the best piece of advice that Vince McMahon ever gave you?
You know what? I guess it would have to be that perception is reality. That really stuck with me throughout my career. And, it was brought on, it was brought on by me being, somewhat of an asshole to an extra talent. Not just kind of set the stage. I was working. This was way back before Raw had even started, and our television matches were usually against extras, or for the old school guys, jobbers. I don't think that's politically correct anymore. You can't use the word jobbers. You offend the extras. But anyway, extra talent. And the kid, like, we've all kind of been there in that spot. But you have to consider, this is the early 90s, and I'm not making an excuse. I was out of line, but I'm just giving you context for the mindset. Is like, you are trying to get over and get your foot in the door and continue to climb up that ladder. And we didn't have the marquee matches on TV. We had these matches against our extra talent. And I was in the ring with a kid that probably shouldn't have been there. And anyway, through the course of the match, he is extremely nervous. I'm pretty sure it was his hometown, and nerves and being in front of probably family and friends and all that, it does affect you, especially again early on in your career. And we're in this match, and things. He could hardly move. I think he was so nervous, and of course, while you're in that, you don't really think about those things. Like, you don't think about how nervous he is or what his experience level is. You're just expecting to go out there and do your moves, do your move set, and get yourself over. That was the mindset of the guys that were the the main talent. And this match, it started out bad and progressively got worse. Obviously, I'm a young guy at that time too, so frustration kind of took over my mindset, because I'm thinking this guy's making me look bad, and I probably took I wouldn't say I took liberties, but I was a little rougher with the guy because I was frustrated than I should have been. Get through the match and go all that, and I come backstage and go through the gorilla position there where Vince is standing up waiting on me. And, as I go up to Vince and I start complaining about this kid, man, he lays into me like, what was that? That's not what we do here. You should be, you should know better. You should be better. And again, now I'm starting to push back a little bit. Like, I don't know who put this kid in the ring. He shouldn't be in the ring. He shouldn't do this. All of this. So Vince and I are going kind of back and forth. And that's when he hit me with it. He says, Mark, let me tell you something. Perception is reality. And the perception is that you're a giant asshole. Now, he said this in the, and there were several people in the gorilla position and listening to this exchange between the two of us. And I think that was part of Vince's plan as well. I think he wanted me to feel embarrassed but his message definitely sank in. And I realized right away what he was saying, and it was true. And that just stuck with me for the rest of my career, and it helped me when I was around other talent to, kind of pass that along to them, because it happened quite a bit, and I just remember how I felt, and it just changed my perspective on people that I was in the ring with, because you're not always going to be in a ring with a Shawn Michaels or a or a Stone Cold or Kurt Angle so that was a really valuable piece of advice he gave me there, and something I carry to this day.
Without Vince's tutelage, do you think you would have been the locker room leader?
I don't know. Obviously Vince was, he was definitely a mentor to me, and again, helped me learn how to conduct myself. But I just, for me, there was, as I matured and came up through the business, and as I was around other talent that had been there longer than me, and saw the way they conducted themselves, good or bad. I just had this imagery in my head of how business should work and how it should run. And, there's a lot of things that factor into that. Of course, Vince was amazing with me and the things that he taught me. And I'm sure that it probably helped considerably, in becoming the locker room leader. That wasn't anything that I ever, I never thought about being that. I mean, I guess it just happened, and that's the way people perceive me. But I just had all these experiences, and good and bad, and as I come up the ladder, and my status, I guess, came up. It was important for me to help people, I guess, try and not make some of the same mistakes that I did. And when I would see them heading in that path towards maybe making some bad decisions, I felt like it was my duty to, if I could say something now, this might not be such a bad situation later. So I think a lot of the younger guys especially appreciated that, because I think they knew the era in which I come up and the guys that I had dealt with early on in my WWE run. Vince and I had a lot of conversations about a lot of things. Not all business, some of, there were just some things were personal, but everything, I guess, kind of ties in together. It's hard to say. There's a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have learned, and I would have made more mistakes and might have been more, I guess more, or not more, but I guess I would have been less proactive in helping guys and seeing, trying to stop them from making the same mistakes that I did. For me, eating healthy isn't a willpower problem. It's a setup problem until I found Factor. With fully prepared meals designed by dietitians, crafted by chefs, and delivered right to my door. I'm hitting my nutrition goals this season without the planning, grocery runs, or cooking. Factor has meals built around your goals, whether that's weight loss, overall nutrition, more protein, or GLP-1 support. For strength and workout recovery, check out Factor's Muscle Pro collection. Every meal is crafted with functional ingredients, lean protein, colorful vegetables, whole foods, and healthy fats. Fresh, never frozen, and over 100 rotating weekly meals. Plus, over 70 add-ons to round out your nutrition, from green juices to peanut butter energy bites. Factor is part of my routine because it's ready in 2 minutes. Factor shops, preps, cooks, and delivers straight to your door, so you have more time for everything you love this summer. Head to factormeals.com/Undertaker50off and use code Undertaker50off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box. Offer valid with new subscription only, while supplies last until September 27th, 2026. See website for more details.
Do you remember the biggest fight you ever had with Vince McMahon?
The biggest fight that I had with Vince, my goodness. I got to run through that 30-year Rolodex, and I think people's perception is that me and Vince were in lockstep together through that whole 30 years, but we butted heads a lot. Yeah, sometimes our visions on the product and the business were polar opposites, and there were a lot of times where I would choose the hill that I wanted to die on, and a lot of them I'd have to assess, like, okay, if I do this, like I would think, okay, well, this needs to be done this way. This is how he wants me to do it. Like, okay, do I do it? Is this the hill that I'm gonna fight him on, or do I just wait? But there. I don't know if this was the biggest one. I will give you an argument that I fought and I lost, but this was the only time that he ever came back to me and said that I was right and he was actually wrong. Out of 30 years, there was one time, and that was the Punjabi prison match. It was originally supposed to be with Khali. Khali had something going on, and they had to put Big Show in the match. And Vince had this idea about, he wanted us to go through the gate or something while we were fighting, and that's how I would get out of the cage. Or I had the idea that I wanted to jump from the inner cage to the outer cage and get out that way. I thought, man, that'll be such a cool visual. I said, they won't expect it. It'll look amazing. And we went at it, and back and forth. And it finally got to the point where I don't want to hear anything else about it. This is the way we're going to do it. I'm like, fine. It's going to suck. And when it sucks, it's going to be on you. But he didn't appreciate that either. But anyway, we did it the way he wanted it, and it was flat. I mean, it was like womp, 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 womp. And so I go back and I just looked at him. I didn't have to say a word. He knew, and he goes, almost under his breath, he goes, yeah, I think you were right on that cage spot. And I was like, really? He just turned around and walked off. But that was such a victory for me to actually have him admit that he was wrong on something. It didn't happen very often. And there was another time. This wasn't so much as an argument as it was almost a physical fight. And this is at the end of my career when I was only working, 2-3 times a year. And I showed up, and I wasn't even there. I think I think I don't know if it was Raw or SmackDown was here, my hometown, and I just went up there to see him. Been going through a bunch of stuff personally, and having a time about outside of the business. It was a rough time in my life, and a lot of things going on. And I went into his office just to say hello and see how he was doing. And anyway, we get to talking, and I kind of start going off and telling him all this stuff, and he looks at me, and it was as straight a face as it could be. He goes, "You know what, Mark? I really think you need to quit feeling sorry for yourself." I was like, "What?" He says, "Yeah, you're feeling sorry for yourself. Man up." There was a sense of rage that come over me at that moment. Like, man, I thought me and you are friends, and like I'm talking to you as a friend. I'm not talking to you as my boss, and I'm just letting you know what's going on in my life. And again, he was right, like, and it dawned on me later, but like, I did tell him, I was like, if you were anybody else, we'd probably be fighting right now. No one talks to me like that. You don't talk to me like that. He said, "Well, damn it, somebody needs to." I'm like, "Man, you are really pushing it." And eventually I said, "Well, I just came in to say hello." I get up and I walk out. And it dawns on me after I calm down, like, you know what? Get your shit together, handle your business. And, but then it become a big, then we laughed about it, like, a few weeks down the road. And I think I finally called him, and I was like, "You know what? I still wish I'd have whooped your ass, but I think you're right." "You're damn right I was. Good to have you back." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." But I mean, he was just, he you know what? He knew with me, I guess he knew when to, he knew when I needed a foot in the ass, or, whether I needed a hug. He was always pretty much, right on all of that stuff. And, I appreciate his, his frankness and his candor sometimes, although maybe not in the moment, but, once I would calm down and really think about things, like, I realized, like, damn it, the old man was right again.
Which wrestling veteran gave you the best advice?
Wow. The guy that gave me the best advice. I don't know that I have, like, just, one guy that gave me the best advice. I think there was a lot of guys that contributed to the way that I worked and the way I conducted myself. Like Jake the Snake, one of the things that he made really clear to me, he's like, your match starts from the time you walk out onto that stage. And at that time, I'd never thought about it that way. And I was like, "You're right." So, I mean, that little bit of advice, especially with my character and how I presented it, I mean, that was like, wow, that's brilliant. And again, there were lots of guys that, would just give me little tidbits here and there. And, not always, not directly. Like sometimes sometimes you overhear things, or sometimes you just watch things happen, and like, oh man, he's thinking on a different level. And some of the best advice I gave was my very first match I had with Bruiser Brody. That advice was loosen up, kid. which I didn't really understand, and he explained it to me in a pretty extreme way. But And there again, it's hard to narrow down all the advice that I've gotten. It's not what you make, it's what you save. That's the old promoters line of crap when you complain about a payoff.
Do you have a favorite Bruiser Brody story?
The only interaction that I had on a personal level with Brody was in that first match that I had in world class wrestling. And, Brody was one of those guys, before I got into the business, as I watched wrestling, he was just somebody that I was always kind of drawn to. Like, he was kind of a bigger than life guy. He was a big brawler, and he had this crazy hair and this furry boots, and you could tell like he could go. Then, from watching it to being in the ring with him is like, okay, this is a pretty surreal moment. And then to actually kind of get manhandled and my ass kicked by him, which was, it is what it is. It's probably not my proudest moment, but it taught me several lessons, about how to conduct myself in a wrestling ring. I guess the thing that's probably the coolest for me was backstage after that match. Again, he worked me over. He worked me over pretty good, but it was still. I just had my first match, and then my first match was with Bruiser Brody. So that's a pretty cool moment. I remember going over to his dressing room, and I was just like, well, yeah, he kicked my ass and smartened me up a little bit, but I felt obligated that I should thank him, for having the match, which I did. And it was the response was I thanked him for the match, and he was like, "Yeah, no problem, kid. Just loosen up a little bit out there, will you?" And that was it. But I did overhear him telling, I think at the time it was Gary Hart was booking in World Class, and I do remember hearing him say to Gary Hart, "What are y'all going to do with that kid that I worked with?" And they were trying to ship me off somewhere else. And hearing Brody tell Gary Hart that if I were you guys, I'd keep him and I'd send some of these other guys. And I was like, wow, that was an incredible endorsement, from somebody who carried a lot of stroke in the business, and obviously somebody that I respected. So hearing that that's the way he felt, after what I thought was a pretty rough match, that stayed with me for a long time, to this day, really.
What piece of advice do you give to rookie wrestlers?
I do have a lot of guys that come up to me and ask for advice, in what they're doing in the matches. And it's funny. I think sometimes there is a genuine. I think there's a genuine. They want to know what I think, and then there's also part of them that thinks that, well, this is what I should do. So trying to kind of dissect that, because there's nothing worse for me than somebody come up and just give me lip service. It infuriates me. Guys think, okay, well, Taker's here. I need to go, act like I give a shit about what he has to say. And, this is what is expected of me. There is that part, but then there is that part that that guys want to get better. And why would you not, if there's a Stone Cold there, or a Shawn Michaels or Kurt Angles or whoever that has had, immense success, why would you not want to pick their brain and get their feedback on what you're doing? But when I feel that people are genuine, then I will watch their stuff and make mental notes and give them what I think. A lot of times I can be harsh, but I think that's kind of the only way to really reach people at sometimes. I genuinely care about this business and how it's presented. And, there's that certain part that just want to get put over. They just want you to say, "Oh man, that's great stuff. You're looking good." And then there's that other point guy that wants okay, what did I do wrong? What, and and then you give them something like, right here in this situation, and you did this, and then you did this. Did you ever think about maybe if you would have done it this way? And then when you get that, you can see it in their eye when the light goes off in their head, like, oh, now you know that they're engaged, and it's, and then when you see them work again and they apply, some of the coaching, then okay, all right, this guy understands, this guy gets it. He wants to be better. But again, if there's talent out there that wants to get better, genuinely wants to get better, by all means, I hope they come to me and they ask me, and they, they have to accept the fact that anything negative that I might say it's not a personal attack. Like, most of these guys I don't know. I don't have relationships with most of these guys, but we do have, we are linked together in this business. And, if you want my opinion, I'll give it to you. It may not be what you want to hear. Those are the concepts that work for me. And, they have to figure that out. Like, they have to figure out the concept that I'm talking about, but then they have to figure out how to make it work for them. Wrestling business is not easy. It is not an easy thing to figure out, because you could have three guys. I will say Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Kurt Angle. They can all give you advice, and each one of their advice could be completely different. And they all can be completely 100% right. And you look and you think, like, okay, these guys all gave me different advice on the same thing. And then you look and you're like, and each of those things worked. You have to be able to consume advice, but then you have to figure out how to make it work for what you do and what your presentation is. It's not easy. It's a very difficult thing to do. So, young guys, if the old timers give you advice, listen and then figure it out.
Are you ready to hold WWE history in the palm of your hand? Topps is bringing you closer to the action than ever before with WWE Topps Now. Highlighting the biggest matches and milestones from WWE shows and PLEs throughout the year. Topps Now is enhancing the fan experience by connecting collectors to superstars and spectacles that ignite their passion. Featuring stunning, event-exclusive photography, each card is made for the moment. And for some lucky collectors, the moment could be the pull of a lifetime. Along with serial numbered parallels, some Topps Now releases offer a chance at rare short prints, superstar autographs, and even pieces of the mat, gear, or other items used during the featured match. So which moments will you collect? With each card only available for a limited time, you won't want to wait to begin your Topps Now journey. Be sure to subscribe to WWE Topps Now mailing list on Topps.com and follow Topps on all social media platforms so you never miss a single moment.
What's your favorite memory of working with Stone Cold Steve Austin?
My favorite memory of working with Steve, honestly, we didn't have a lot of like pay-per-views or really, really intense one-on-one angles. We did some stuff, but one of my favorite things working with Steve, well, you definitely were going to be on top, right? you're definitely in a top spot if you're working with Steve. That was always good. Your payoffs were going to be good. Your fan reactions are going to be amazing. I enjoyed working with Steve more in house shows than I did on TVs or pay-per-views. In the house shows back in the day, I mean, that's when you really got to go out and be creative and be spontaneous and just really really just do the craft of professional wrestling. And it was so fun with him because his character, as intense as it was, he could be a funny son of a bitch in the ring. He just could. He would do shit like I remember out of nowhere once doing Old School to me, but with a Steve twist to it, like where I would Old School on the top rope, Steve Old Schooled on the bottom rope. Went through it, did everything exactly the same, except he just did it off of the bottom rope. And, it's just one of those things, like you get caught in the middle of a match and somebody does something off the wall like that, and you're just like, dude, come on. But, that was what some of the, being in the house shows, you could do some things like that here and there. And funny enough, like it just helps you, those kind of things. It breaks a little bit of the monotony sometimes of being on the road for as long as we were back then. With Steve, those are my favorite moments. Yeah, those are my second favorite moments. Going to the mailbox and getting the check after working with Steve, that was probably my favorite moment.
What is the funniest thing you saw Paul Bearer do?
I don't know if it was the funniest thing that Paul ever did. It was probably one of the funnier things that happened to Paul. So this is right after Paul had betrayed me and went with Mankind. I mean, this is way back. Like, we didn't have the same security at this point as we do today. Like today, our security is awesome, but there were a time where we didn't have anybody. We would sometimes have to park across the street from some of these civic arenas and stuff like that. And, the fans had complete access to us, and, you had to deal with that. And I remember I pulled up to the arena. I pull up to the arena, and I'm getting my bag out of the back of the rent-a-car, and this girl appears, just like, boom, she was right there. And she goes, this has been a long time ago. I'm trying to I don't know if she referred to me as Lord Undertaker or Lord of Darkness, something like, it was like, oh boy. And I turn, right, because I'm a little taken back that someone's right up on me, but, she goes, I will follow you anywhere. And then she pulls her top down and shows the top of her, I think it was her left breast, where she had a gigantic tattoo of my face. And I'm like, oh, this is a nutbird right here. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, oh, okay. I appreciate that. I get my stuff and I go into the arena. So I go into the arena, and I think it was Arnie Skolin, who was the agent, and he come up. He's, hey kid, you got some flowers in the production office. So I was like, well, thanks, Arnie. So I go into the production office, and there's like this giant bouquet of roses spray painted black, and then there's a package. It's all wrapped up really nice. So I left the flowers in the production office, and I take the package and I go to the dressing room. So I open this package up, and it is I guess a vial or like a container of that perfume was once in that, the women, I guess they used it wasn't like a spray. It was like I guess you put it on the lid and then you put it on. I don't know what the official term for that is, but anyway, the perfume was all gone, and it had been filled with blood. So I have a vial, I guess, or some kind of perfume container full of blood. And now I'm like, wow, okay. And I'm putting it all together, like, I'm sure that's my friend in the parking lot's blood. So I'm showing everybody my perfume bottle full of blood. Everybody's like, because this was the blood was very unusual, but the flowers and a lot of the things that I got sent to me at the arenas back then were pretty interesting. I mean, I had some really cool stuff sent to me. But anyway, so everybody's freaking out about the perfume bottle full of blood. And anyway, we go out and I make my entrance, and Paul Bearer is part of somehow or another, he's involved in this match. I don't know if I was working against whoever he was managing. I don't know if it was Mankind at this point or not, but he was managing somebody, or he came out. And this girl that was in the parking lot is on the front row. And the next thing that I know, she jumps over the barricade and double legs Paul. She's got him wrapped up at the ankles. If you guys remember Paul, especially at this time period, he was a little top heavy, and she's got him hooked, and his feet are completely together, so his balance is not that great, and he is trying to get this girl off of him, and she is not letting go. And I think she finally got him and took him down before the police could get there to take her and remove her from the building. But actually watching Paul fight this fan off was just, it was, you can't even, it was so funny. It was just one of those things like, am I actually really seeing this? Am I watching this fan double leg Paul Bearer and him fighting her off? It was really one of the funniest things that I can remember. He was fighting for his life, and I'm pretty sure he actually ended up going down. And it was just, I don't think he heard the end of that for a long time, being taken down and manhandled by this girl. But yeah, that's just one of those Paul Bearer stories that kind of sticks in my mind. And he was so, the funny thing is he deserved it so much. Like, not only just for turning on me, but just in general, like it couldn't have happened to a better person than Paul.
What is your favorite Yokozuna memory?
Oh my gosh, Yoko. My favorite memory with Yoko. I have so many fond memories of Yoko. I miss him to this day. I miss him so much. So this is later on, and I think this is after our run. So we weren't working against each other, but all of the BSK boys we're all on the same loop, and we were in Tampa, and we had to go to I want to say Fort Lauderdale. So I don't know. There's like 4 or 5. They're either Lincoln Town cars or Cadillacs we've all rented, and we are cruising down to Fort Lauderdale. And I was by myself. We get out of Tampa, we pull over, and then Yoko. We aren't working together at this point, but it was just the way I did things. Anyway, Yoko ends up jumping in the car with me, and so we're all cruising in this convoy down down the interstate and across Alligator Alley, through Yeehaw Junction. The boys that work the Florida Territorial recognize all of those things. But anyway, so we're driving along, and like I'm driving. So whoever is in there's a rule. The co-pilot can't sleep. The co-pilot is responsible for keeping the driver entertained and making sure that no one falls asleep while they're driving. And I mean, that's just kind of the rule. So we're about 20 minutes down the road, and Yoko has put his, this is how far back it is, his cassette tape. He puts it in the player, and Like it's all of this is like the early stages of gangster rap. Like, I mean, he had the hard core stuff, and he had them all on these cassette tapes. So he puts this in, he put the tape in, he's got it cranked up, and then he's sitting there, and then he falls asleep. And I'm driving, and now, I'm listening to this, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So, I turn the music down, and then he wakes up. He turns the music back up, and I'm like, yo, come on, man. He goes, no, Marcus. He's like, this shit is good. And I'm like, no, man, it really isn't. Like, this is not, at this point, I'm a metalhead, right? Like, that's all I listen to. But anyway, it actually did grow on me. I have to admit. But at the time, it was just like, come on. Between his snoring and the gangster rap was just not, it wasn't happening for me. So anyway, all right, I'm still driving. He falls back asleep again. I'm like, no, man, this ain't the way this is supposed to work. So I take the tape out, and then I just put it on a radio station, and then I took it off of the radio station, and then I just put it on static. And I turned the radio up, I mean, really loud. And then I turned, and we were in summer. I think it was like July, August. So in Florida. So I turned the heat all the way up, and man, he is over there just cutting Z's, and I'm driving, and I'm sweating, and I'm miserable, but I'm like, I know at some point he's going to wake up. And so I'm driving, and he's over there sawing logs, but I look over there, and I can see his forehead is all just beaded up with sweat, and sweat starting to roll down. And I'm just like, I know he's going to wake up at any moment, right? So I'm just driving along. And then all of a sudden, I was like, God damn it, Marcus, what are you doing? Right? So he's turning, like, the radio's up. I mean, it's so loud. Like, it was giving me a headache. So he's trying to figure out what's going on with the radio. Like, he was out. So he's trying to figure out what's going on with the radio and why it's so hot in there. So he turns it all, he figures it out. He gets the tape back playing and down the volume down a little bit. And he finally figures out that the heat's on full blast. He gets the air going back on. He's cutting promos on me. Anyway, so everything kind of cools off again. Everything kind of goes back into the thing. He falls asleep again. So I do everything all over again. I take the tape out. I think this time I took the tape out and I threw it out the window. So it's static's playing on the radio. The heat's cranked up, man. And again, I looked over, and he is just like a waterfall, just wakes up. I think he actually physically hit me at that point, like a half-ass chop. And now I'm taking the car. Now I'm swerving all over the road. We end up stopping for gas, I remember, and he got out of the car. He got in with somebody else, and remember him asking me for his tape. And I told him that it fell out of the window. I didn't tell him I threw it, but he wasn't happy about that either. But just, you know what, that was those were such fun times. The business was struggling. We'd lost a bunch of talent to WCW. And we were all just fighting to keep our head above water. Some of my fondest times in the WWE were here. And again, we weren't making any money at all. But man, the camaraderie and the guys and the stuff that we got to do together was, man, it was just an amazing time. And Yoko was such an incredible person and awesome friend. Man, it was really it's a really shame that he was taken from us so soon. Again, I miss him, and I look back at times like that and just laugh sometimes, because it's such an awesome time for a bunch of guys to be trying to survive and make a living and having a really good time while we did it. On this show, we talk a lot about the grind, the history, and what it took to build a legacy in this business. Guys like Austin, Rock, Cena, and obviously the women who completely revolutionized the division.
Oh, thanks, babe. Nice of you to notice. But you're right, the history of WWE is unmatched. And for the fans who lived through those eras with us, that nostalgia is incredibly powerful.
It really is. And if you want to represent that history, WWE Shop and Fanatics have the ultimate collection of official WWE Legends merchandise.
And they really do. They have everything from classic graphic tees and hoodies to retro jackets and title belts. And honestly, the women's fits and styles they have now, they're amazing. I went on Fanatics the other day and the selection's massive. You can find gear for all the greats, including, of course, The Undertaker.
Grab your Legends gear at WWE Shop and Fanatics today.
How close did you actually come to going to WCW?
We were going through such a incredibly difficult time. You know, they were down there doing really cutting edge stuff, more, more mature, I guess, for no better term, mature storylines and stuff that was much more mainstream. And we had all of these, and I know this will sound funny coming from a character, but like we had these really just over the top characters that weren't really resonating well with the audience. And again, business was horrible. The direction at the time was horrible. And I remember talking with Kevin Nash. He's like, Mark, man, you need to make that jump now. Like, you know, I think, you know, you can, you know, this is the kind of money, you know, they're handing out. And I think, you know, you could do well down here, you know. And I was like, you know, I listened to it. I would be lying if I didn't think like, wow, that's, again, we're working at the time, we're working 20, 25 days a month and barely making enough money to survive. It was difficult. And I knew that they were down there giving money away just so that talent wouldn't be available to WWE. And so I listened, and honestly, I considered it. And but at the end of the day, you know, I just thought like, I'll never forget. And although the same people weren't in charge at WCW at this point, I'll never forget. And, you know, I've told the story many times, and, you know, obviously people know this story really well, but being told that you'll never draw money in this business really struck a nerve with me. And the one guy that believed in giving me a chance, because Vince wasn't completely sold on me either. But the one guy that gave me a chance was Vince and the WWE. That meant more to me than the instant money that I could have made, which could have got me out of debt and all of those things. I knew I had confidence in the company, and I had confidence in Vince that this would, the ship would right itself, and I would be down there and I would be miserable because I had made a poor decision. Vince believed in me, and I felt obligated to stand by him even when business was so bad. But I knew that we could turn it around, and I just like, you know what? It's a great deal, but I can't do it. I got to stay here, and I got to be part of something that's going to be huge. And that's what I believed, and that's exactly what ended up happening.
When the NWO came back to WWE, what were your thoughts?
You know, I thought it was a great idea. Vince is an incredible businessman, and where things would, like, throughout my time with Vince and WWE, there were a lot of things that come about where wrestlers had done this or had said this about him or said this about the WWE. And Vince always had that ability to, like, you know what? What they can provide for us or what they can do for us at this point is far greater than what they've said about us. Like, he was, when it come to business, like, he could get by the personal beef or whatever. Like it was what, and I know it's kind of been said as a, kind of a catchphrase, but what's best for business was a true statement with him. And, all of those guys, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and Hogan, and I mean, those were all big names in our industry. And he felt that if they could tap into that stuff and bring it to WWE and help us, then he was all for it. So, at this point, I mean, I trusted his judgment, and the battle, we had already won the battle. So, if they can help us, then, let's go. I didn't have I didn't have any kind of personal beef with Nash or Scott. So I didn't care one way or another in that aspect. I mean, I didn't hold a grudge because they kicked our ass for so long. I was just like, hey, if they make us better, I'm all for it. And that was Vince's, that's the way he looked at it too.
What was your take on the curtain call at MSG?
I wasn't there, and it was probably a good thing that I wasn't. Yeah, it goes against everything that I believe about the business, especially at the time that it happened. I thought it was selfish. I get it. I mean, these guys were all best friends, and they'd been through a lot together and traveled up and down the roads together. I mean, I get where they were coming from, but I just thought that they put themselves ahead of the business for that time period. I think in today's product, I don't think it is what it is. But I mean, if it happened today, then it's just like, oh, well, yeah, everybody's out of pocket about the business. It's me included. I mean, I'm part of that, but it's just back then it was a different time, and it was a different era. And, I just looked at it as, I thought it was a selfish move, and, that's business. I don't care. I don't hold any personal grudges about it. It's happened, and we've moved on, and the business has boomed, and it is what it is. But at the time, no, I didn't care for it at all.
When Sting came to WWE, did you think you were finally going to have a match with him? And why didn't the match happen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that the people had already been clamoring for that match for a long time, and it seems like a no-brainer. Like, why on earth would you not do that? But for whatever reason, Vince did not see it, didn't like it, didn't want it, and I was like, man, this is a home run. This is an easy main event for a pay-per-view, but I don't really have an answer. I never really had a in-depth conversation with Vince about why he didn't want to do it. My goodness, a Sting versus Undertaker. I mean, he's obviously knows more about business than I do, but that one just seems like a home run. That was just, they decided to walk the guy instead of pitch to him. I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but I mean, I don't have any regrets. It wasn't my decision. But my goodness, I would have loved to have been able to have that match, and I guess it just wasn't meant to be. But what could have been? I mean, it would have seemed like a no-brainer. But it'll be discussed for the rest of time. A what if could have happened. What if these two guys would have been able to do it? But I remember running into Sting. I think it was after the WrestleMania that we didn't work. I remember we were on the same plane together, talking. I was like, I don't know, this is beyond me. I don't know why. It is what it is, man. I guess. Yeah, I think Sting, that's probably got to be the biggest miss of a WrestleMania. Those two characters, that would have done some incredible business. I'm sorry, I don't know. Wasn't me. Wasn't me.
What was Macho Man Randy Savage like to work with?
He was intense, man. Like he was a perfectionist, like in the ring. Like he wanted to put on the absolute best match of the night, and those are the kind of people that you want to work with. And it didn't matter that it was in a house show or a live event, man. You always want to work with somebody that wants to go out and steal the show. And Mach's work ethic was just, man, it was incredible. I learned in those dark matches, I learned a lot about the intensity and how to react to someone with that kind of energy. And I wish we would have got to do a bigger program. Obviously, we got to, the program was between Mach and Jake the Snake. It was the point for which they were going to use to turn me babyface. But I would have loved to have worked a singles program with Mach just to hear the interviews that he would cut on me. That would be incredible. I was really sad when he left because I just always felt like there was something there between that we could have done together that would have been really big business. But yeah, man, Mach was special.
What was your favorite supernatural feat as The Undertaker?
I think probably for me was the being able to, there's a tie, I guess, between being able to appear in an empty casket. I always thought that was extremely cool. And then being able to survive being buried alive. I think those two things really stand out as far as the mystique and the lore of The Undertaker. And I think the caskets especially. We did some really, really cool things with the caskets and caskets being opened and them nothing being in the casket to the next time it's opened, there I am, and being able to do those kind of things. I always thought that, like, man, those were such important nuggets for the character to be able to appear in places and disappear and do all those things. And I just think it was such a vital part of, obviously, the mystique of The Undertaker. It's like, wow, man, this guy can show up and do different things. And throwing lightning was pretty cool too. I mean, not everybody can throw lightning. That's that's a gift. Like I don't know if I could still throw it, but kind of rusty there. But that was cool as well.
What was your favorite moment from the Ministry of Darkness?
The Ministry, that was a lot of fun. Like we really, really got to push the envelope with the Ministry, with the symbolism and all of the innuendo and everything else. We got more flack too during that Ministry period, but it was just the darkness of all of that and putting people up on the symbol, which my goodness, I put Stephanie. What a difference what a change that would have been if I'd actually married Stephanie. I mean, I'm sure like I would have probably kicked her to the curb by now, but she's gonna appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, that was some really, really cool stuff that we did, and the sacrifices and just the overall darkness of it really pushed a lot of people's buttons. Where that original version of The Undertaker was like, oh, that's kind of spooky and that's different. But man, the Ministry kind of made people feel things that like, oh, this dude's like, this dude really is demented and like he's messed up, like, and it made it work. And I don't know that we could do today what we did back then as far as content with, people would absolutely lose their freaking minds, I think, in this day and age, but it was fun while it lasted.
Was there any creative from the Ministry of Darkness period that was shot down?
Well, I really did want to sacrifice Midian. I thought that would have been really cool to watch on TV, but they shut me down on that one. Said it was a little bit too extreme. I was like, man, but think of the ratings. You think? It wasn't so much. No, it wasn't so much. Back then, pretty much everything that I pitched for that, we went with. Obviously, the part that I didn't like, and I've complained about many times, was when the ministry went corporate. That's when I thought it watered it down and made it too wrestling. Then, like, I think we had something that was really edgy and again made people think and made people feel a certain way. And then when it became the corporate ministry, it was just like, wah, 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 wah. Yeah, it sucked. It really did. I hated it. But what you gonna do, man? You got to roll with the flow and come up with something else and get out of that and move on. But the ministry, yeah, that was a good time. Good times.
Which opponent brought out the absolute best in you?
There's a lot of guys that I had some really, really incredible chemistry with, but to actually bring it out of me in the ring and like to a point where I knew that I had to be sharp and could go, it's either got to be Shawn Michaels or Kurt Angle. My chemistry with Shawn was just second to none. We were on such the same wavelength, the way we put matches together and all of that. We were so dialed in. And then Kurt was just a machine, man. He could freaking go. You had to be able to go just to keep up with him. I think we had a match, I think it was in 2000, No Way Out in 2006. Man, such a incredible match. One of the matches I'm very most proud of. And man, it was fast paced, which again, I like to work up to a fast pace. But with Kurt, man, it was just like right from bell to bell, man. It was just go time. But he was so good in the ring. But yeah, it'd have to be Shawn or Kurt for sure.
The 30-year anniversary of The Rock's WWE debut is later this year. What were your first impressions of The Rock, and do you have any favorite stories from working with him?
Who? The Rock. Who's he? No. I remember the night that he came out in Madison Square Garden, but I saw him with the kind of the island gimmick on, the what were they, tassels? I don't know what were those called? I don't even know what they were called, but they looked like tassels to me. And he came out with this rah-rah, yucky, baby face kind of energy. And I was like, oh man, this guy's done for. I swear, I thought like, man, I mean, you knew like he was talented. Like he was an athlete. He played football at Florida, but he came out with that yucky baby face presentation. And I was like, oh man, this guy, he don't stand a chance. And it's one of those things, duly noted. I was wrong. He had a fair run. I guess he's okay. I definitely missed on that one. I mean, he really turned into something extremely special. I wish he'd hung around a little longer. But you got big dreams, you got to go live them. So, and then I think for favorite moment, there's one that stands out, and it's not like because we did something really, really great. It was. I just remember one particular night that I'm working against Rock, and I think it was a Monday Night Raw that we were in a match together, and he is absolutely just kicking the shit out of me, and he's just going off, and he's throwing punch after punch after punch after punch, and I'm selling and I'm hitting, he's hitting me, and then I look at him and I realize that he's not even looking at me. He's looking over my shoulder at the Tron. He's basically watching himself kick my ass on the Tron. So he is over here like wearing me out, but his head is looking this way. Like he was really actually enjoying watching himself kick my ass. And I had to call him out, right? Like, you know what? Hey, dude, if you're going to kick my ass, will you at least look at me while you do it? Which he laughed and we had a moment out of. But, you know, that was just one of those deals like, are you kidding me right now? Like you're not even going to look at me. You're going to watch yourself hit me with all these. It was just one of those moments that, you know, it was kind of funny. It was kind of funny to me anyway. Yeah, no, that always sticks out as like one of those things. It's just like, bro, like I'm over here. Like, can you just turn your head a little bit? Act like you're, yeah, okay, thanks. WrestleMania, when I came out at the end of that at 40, that was fun, man. That was a little walk down memory lane there. I tell you what, though, man, I think he got a little heavier from. Either he got heavier or I'm not quite as strong as I used to be. I don't know what that was, but no, that was a lot of fun, and you know, to be able to, you know, to get in there with one of the guys from that era and relive a little bit of that magic. That was fun. It was that was worth the run that I had to make to get to the ring on my brand new replaced knees. It all paid off because that was a really cool moment. And actually, yeah, that really gave me a lot of closure as well to my in-ring wrestling career. It was just kind of like, wow, yeah, this is fun, and this is a good way to shut it all down. So yeah, it was really cool. All right, everyone, that's a wrap on this Q&A. I actually really enjoyed this. So you guys keep sending in your questions, and we will do this again. This is one of my favorite formats to do. I like answering questions, and I like answering them better than I like asking them. So you guys keep sending them in, and we will run this back in the very near future.